In the 1960s, 2 decades after the Second World War, the post-war housing crisis was still ongoing. Tower blocks became more and more numerous across the UK as a quick solution to the problem. Up until this point, tower blocks were the way forward. They were the future. Or at least that was until one incident changed everything. One tower block which altered the entire landscape of tower block designing. As I said in my video about the post-war housing crisis, today we'll have a look at Ronan Point. In 1966, construction began on some tower blocks in Newham, East London, known as Freemasons Estate. One of these tower blocks was Ronan Point, a name now synonymous with cheaply and poorly built prefabricated high-rise tower blocks. Construction on Ronan Point was complete in 1968, and just like other tower blocks of the era, Ronan Point's opening was met with optimism, but it was not to last. On the morning of the 16th of May 1968, Ivy Hodge, one of the residents of the recently opened building, woke up and went into her kitchen to make a morning cup of tea. When she lit a match to start her gas stove, it exploded. Miss Hodge was thrown backwards by the explosion, which possibly saved her life. The explosion itself was not massive, but the domino effect it created would prove to be the real problem. There were 4 flats above Ivy Hodge's. Because the building was only recently opened, only one of them was occupied. With the loss of support from underneath, they collapsed. This resulted in the debris landing on top of the flats below, which caused structural failure and the collapse of the entire corner of the building. Miraculously, Ivy Hodge actually survived the explosion with only minor burns. Somehow her gas stove also survived and she took it with her to her new home. Others weren't so lucky though. 4 people were killed in the disaster and public confidence in the high-rise living was shattered. The government immediately ordered an inquiry to see what went wrong. Laws regarding building regulations needed to be altered to prevent disaster from happening again. Interestingly, the council chose not to demolish the building, but instead to rebuild the lost parts of it. It was strengthened to make sure that the disaster could not repeat itself. However, some weren't content with this. Sam Webb, an architect who took part in the inquiry and later pushed for greater safety controls in tower blocks, said that the building would collapse in itself in 15 years. And Webb's prediction wasn't that far off either. His concerns were shared by members of the local council, and safety of the building, and for that matter other buildings on Freemasons Estate as well, was also in serious question. All 9 of the tower blocks on Freemasons Estate were evacuated by the council. In 1984, fire testing began on the now unoccupied Ronan Point. The inquiry into the disaster had also raised questions for fire safety in tower blocks, so they experimented by lighting a fire in one of the flats. Their concerns were certainly proven, and they had to end the experiment early out of fear that the entire tower block would collapse. Ronan Point and all of the other tower blocks on Freemasons Estate were demolished in 1986. All 9 of the buildings were taken down piece by piece. Many people believe that if Ronan Point was not demolished, it could have very easily been destroyed in the Great Storm of 1987, which happened little over a year later. Ronan Point destroyed public confidence in high-rise living. It highlighted the tower blocks were not as good as they were made out to be. The regulations introduced after Ronan Point disaster have likely saved numerous lives. This failure would go on to stop similar incidents in the future, and indeed there has never been a similar incident in the UK since. Although some of the buildings reinforced by the disaster were a little too strong. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed my video on Ronan Point. Next, I'm planning to continue my Glasgow history series with shorts, and as I said back in December 2021 that I'd cover the Kenneth Head flats. I can't promise a full video since information is still very scarce on those buildings, but I will however make a series of shorts about tower blocks which are harder to get information on. Since I do keep my word, Kenneth Head will be the first of these shorts.